A young boy and his grandfather were standing in a large cathedral with glass-stained windows. And the young boy was fascinated by the pictures in the windows. And he asked his grandpa who the pictures were of. And the grandpa explained that they were pictures of the saints of the church. And it took a little guy a minute to process the information. And then he suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, saints are people that the light shines through." When we hear saints, we think of canonized people, perfect people, or old people, don't we? Perhaps we think of people with halos in paintings. But I bet that you never think of yourself. We don't, do we? We are usually embarrassed when someone calls us a saint, aren't we? Celebrating All Saints is a time in the church for reflection and for reverence. It's an occasion, an important one in the church calendar, when we gather together to honor and remember the saints that are both known to us and unknown to us, those who have dedicated their lives to doing the work of the Spirit through their works and through their faith. So I am a Moravian. I don't know how many of you have heard of the Moravian denomination. So in the Caribbean, there's the Catholic, the Anglican, the Moravian, the Methodists, and then the Pentecostals. So the Moravians they were Eastern European missionaries that came through the Caribbean and so on right after slavery. And the Moravians were the first church who acknowledged and christened post-slavery children, babies, who started christening them and recording their birth, right? So most Caribbean people, the Moravian church is bigger than the Methodist church in the Caribbean because of that. And then after that, so the Moravian were actually christening the babies on Sunday mornings, and then the Methodists started christening the babies on Wednesday evenings. So I am Moravian. My grandmother was Moravian. My mom is Moravian. So in the Moravian church in the Caribbean, we celebrate All Saints in a different way in our village churches. So every Easter morning, we have Easter sunrise service at 5 a.m. And we gather at the church and we begin with the reading of Jesus' death and burial. And then we do a 20-minute processing down to the church cemetery singing Good Friday songs. And then at the cemetery, the cemetery is probably the size of this church. It's a small island. Cemetery is not very big. And probably the size of this church. And we get there, and then we all go and stand at the graves of our loved ones. And then there we begin the Easter liturgy, honoring the risen Jesus and also honoring our departed saints who will resurrect with Christ. And then the liturgy ends with us joyfully singing Easter hymns as the sun rises. But this is all done with us scattered throughout the cemetery, standing at the grave of our loved ones. And some of us, some of the elders, would actually bring with them food and lay on the graves, bread and bun and fruit and nuts and so on, and lay these on the graves of our departed loved ones. So we do it differently. We don't have an All Saints service like this in November. All Saints is a time for us to honor and remember not just church people, but our people who have served not just in the church, but our loved ones who have served us in our lives. And so All Saints can be a bittersweet experience as we reflect on the impact that they have had in our lives and the ways in which they amplified qualities of sainthood, like the way in which they loved us. Our moms and dads and grandparents who made us who we are. For some of us, the saints in our lives have been our friends and siblings, right? Who have passed on. And it is through their examples that we become saints. They have shown us the way to love and kindness, and they are always there to guide us. They are the ones that the light shines through that illuminates our path on the journeys of our lives. There's this whole concept of community of saints. Do you guys remember the Apostles' Creed? Yeah? The community of saints, the forgiveness of sins. I remember it. And life everlasting. Amen. So the communion of saints, when we think of a communion of saints, when we think of this special occasion, we actually, in the first hymn, there was a part of that hymn that speaks of the communion of saints, when all the saints gather together in one place. This is basically a reminder that we are not alone in our spiritual journeys. We are a part of a larger, timeless community of people of goodwill, people who are living and sitting right beside us, as well as people who have passed on. We are all connected to this grid of life, and that connection never ends. It's really a profound thing when you think about it. You know, my cousin Paula in Texas, in Houston, she practices the Yoruba faith, which is a traditional West African spiritual practice. And so they set up altars throughout their homes to invite the spirits of the ancestors to be with them. And they believe that one of the ancestral spirits, called an Orisha, is specifically assigned to them to be their guide and guard through life. It's a fascinating practice. Well, a few years ago, I was in Houston, and I went to their gathering on a Sunday morning, and it's they all wear white. It's just so interesting. It has been around before Christianity, right? And so I'm going to share a link was shared by Iyanla, who's a TV personality, and she's a high priestess of the practice of Yoruba.
I am a minister in one of the most ancient traditions of African spirituality that exist. The Yoruba tradition are based on the oracles of Ifa. So the oracles of Ifa are the sacred scriptures for the Yoruba people that teach you about living in order and value and balance. But the four basic principles for life that Yoruba people live by is, number one, honor God. Have an intimate relationship with the God of your understanding. And since Yorubas didn't speak English, they didn't say God, they said Olodumare or Olorum. But that is not to say there's another God, it's just honoring the tongue of the people that are worshiping the God. The other principle is have a relationship with your ancestors' and your clan. So those people who came before you, those people who worked the land or the country or the culture in which you live, you must have a good relationship with them. In European spirituality, they're called angels. In African spirituality, they're called ancestors. The third tenet is have a relationship with your parents and your family. The African culture and tradition spiritually doesn't believe in put your parents in the nursing home. You got to take care of mama and daddy and grandma and big mama and big daddy till they're gone. Because that's how you get blessed in heaven, just to have a good relationship with your parents and your clan on earth, and finally, have a good relationship with your community. So a relationship with God, your creator, a relationship with your ancestors and your guardians, and a relationship with your family, your parents, your clan, and a relationship with your immediate community. Those are the four tenets of a healthy, balanced life according to Yoruba tradition, presented in the form of 256 Odu that give the oral tradition of how to manage and master your life.
The Yoruba is not interesting. Since before Christianity, the Yoruba tradition is primarily based on what we seek to do on All Saints Sunday, which is to not just honor our ancestors, but honor the people in our lives in one generalized and loving communion of all of the saints together. The lives of the saints or ancestors we honor provide us with inspiration for our own daily lives. And we can look to their experiences and their teachings to guide our own spiritual journeys. Their stories of dedication and sacrifice can serve as an example of how we can live more meaningful lives. And even their failings and mistakes teach us how we can do better and how we can be better. We would like to think that we could never measure up to the saints, right? When we think of our loving, dear grandmas, we think of them fondly, and we think we could never be like that. That's just a different kind of heart and love. We would like to think that our ancestors, the loving people of the past, were the real saints, and we could never measure up. But I dare say that we can be even better saints than they were if we learn by their example and by their mistakes. All Saints is a time when we come together to connect with each other in love, to renew our commitment to living a life that reflects the values and virtues exemplified by the best of these individuals. And it's a time when we recommit to carrying the torch. One of the things our folks did that I think we're missing the boat on today is realizing the importance of community. We've messed that up, right? Our ancestors, our moms and dads, our grandparents, they didn't have much, so they depended on each other and helped each other and spent time with each other for survival's sake. But that facilitated a healthy community that many of us have benefited from, and many of us have raised our children in. And, I'm talking about mentally here. We are shifting from that communal type of way of living to an individualistic type of way of living, and the upcoming generation is suffering terribly from us not being able to maintain what the folks before us have shown us an example of what works. Like, for instance, mental illness in our kids are more rampant than ever before. The work that the saints have done to build the church, to give us a place to gather together, to praise the Creator, and to be social together is falling by the wayside. And each generation before us has contributed to the church according to their times, to build on what was before them, to shift and change according to the demographic. And your grandparents, they build the church according to what they had and what they think they needed at the time. And then your parents continued the work based on their demographic and what was happening to them at the time. But then we get to a point where we don't think that we should shift and change to accommodate the need of our community. I think that's where we miss the boat, and that's where we separate from our saints. The one thing that we could do to honor our saints before us is to continue their legacy of shifting our church to suit the times. We really, really struggle with that. All Saints is a deeply meaningful and spiritual occasion that offers an opportunity for reflection, for remembrance, and for renewal of our commitment to being people of kindness and people of goodwill, to being people who answer the needs of the community like the folks before us did. It's a time to draw inspiration from the lives of the saints of the past, to remember our beloved, our loved ones, and to find solace in this larger, timeless community of saints that we all are a part of. And it is also a time for us to remember our role as saints of the present and saints of the future. It is us who the light shines through. Us sitting right here. The light shines through us too. And we bear that in mind as we celebrate. Thanks be to God.